Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special Marvel Crisis Protocol Atomic Mass Transmissions live painting hobby stream extravaganza, all the other words that we want to throw in there. I'm Will Schick, very excited to join you today. I'm glad that you all are here with me. I hope that you had a wonderful weekend and that your 2021 is going off as well as any new year can with everything that's going on, staying safe, staying healthy, all of that good stuff. I'm glad that you could make it here today. Today we're going to paint the goodest of good boys. That's right, we're painting the inhuman Lockjaw. This gigantic, cuddly boy. This little lovely. I guess I'm not really sure bulldog. I guess probably. At least that's what it seems like to me. It doesn't matter. Creed genetics, mutations, all that fun stuff. Teragenesis has created the most massive of lockjaws. We're going to dive right in and start painting on this fella today. We're going to get some good colors down, hopefully try to finish him within the hour to a great tabletop standard and give you some ideas and some ways to go about getting your own lockjaws painted when he releases next month. So let's go ahead and dive right in, flip this camera over and take a look. So here's our Lockjaw. You can see that I've zenithly primed him like we always do. So I just did a dark undercoat followed by a light undercoat. I used an airbrush. You can, of course, use a rattle can, anything like that. This gives you really great a view of the volumes on the miniature. It allows you to do washes and stuff like that. However, because we have so much surface area to cover with Lockjaw, I thought instead of doing washes today, which will take a long time to dry, we'd have some fun and we do some wet blending. So how do you wet blend if you haven't ever seen us do it before? We've done it a couple of times on different streams. Effectively, wet blending is simply blending the paint on the miniature itself. So instead of like mixing on the palette, you're simply going to use two different brushes. You're going to load those brushes up with two different styles of paint. You want to make sure that your paint is nice and loose for this. So I've put a bunch of glazed medium in with my paint to make sure that it's really flowy and smooth. You want a long working time with this because, of course, you want to make sure that you have plenty of working time on the miniature so you can mess with the blends. Wet blending is really fun. You get really lost in it as you just like play and play with an area and kind of get it to where you want. You're looking for two different colors that you normally would blend together. So you want a really dark tone, you want a really bright tone. For this, I'm using an umber color from Scale, which is the brown leather. Whoop. So there we go. So we're using brown leather for our dark, and then I grabbed this brown Dubai for my light. And that's what we're going to start with, and then we'll kind of work in some other colors as well as we go along, but those are going to be my two bases. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to grab my brush. I'm going to make sure my paint is still nice and wet because I did set it up before the stream. So I might have to add a little bit more, either water or medium to it. And we're just going to slather this on nice and smooth. And you can cover as much area as you want. It's best to kind of leave. And again, this is why you want a long working time, especially with something like Lockjaw, where you want to cover a lot of area because you really want to do this wet blending kind of all at once. It's just going to let you see like where things are going and how everything's going to go. But I always really enjoyed wet blending. I don't typically use it on areas this big, so we're going to see how it goes. It's kind of a new experiment for me as well. But these really big, smooth surfaces are great areas to kind of work this technique because you have a lot of smooth gradients that you want to get. You want to get those transitions really nice. Everything going on. Just kind of hit the side. And I'm going to avoid his underbelly. I was looking at a lot of Lockjaw pictures. I noticed that most of the Lockjaw pieces, he's one solid kind of brown color. But there are, for sure, a couple of instances where he has that white kind of puppy underbelly. So I think we're going to do that just for some color difference and some fun. So you can see now I've taken my second brush, which is loaded with that Dubai, and I'm simply just using that to kind of like mix in with my other colors. I'm just allowing those colors to mix on the miniature itself. And once I get to a point that I'm pretty happy with where those blends are going, I'll grab an even lighter color and I'll start blending in those as well. So this is just a process where you can just really play. As you get better at it, obviously you can be a lot more controlled with how much paint you're putting on and where. I kind of like to just mash the paint together and let it do its work. So you just kind of alternate back and forth between your brights and your darks. You just kind of work them together back and forth. And you can see how that paint is just blending on the miniature itself and helping us create those highlights and those depths and shadows and all of that good stuff. I think we're gonna have to mix up a bright color here in a second as well. Biggest thing about where you want to go, grab your other brush. It's good to keep your brushes clean every once in a while too, because of course the paint is going to mix in the brush, so especially with that bright one. For those asking who missed it, I'm using Scale 75's brown leather and brown Dubai. So brown leather is kind of my darker color. The brown Dubai is my lighter color. And then we'll switch over to some more light colors here as well as we get going. So this is really a technique that can be fast, can be slow. It all depends on how much effort and time you want to put into it. We're going to let that dry just a little bit though. We're working pretty wet. You want to watch to make sure you're not pulling paint off of the miniature. So might have our paint a little too loose right now. So we can fix that in a bit. Let's go back on here. You could of course do this over, like you could do a little glaze first or a filter, if you will. You could highlight it. The Zenith Prime with a bit of brown just to get a better undercoat under it, depending on what kind of technique and colors you wanted. There's a lot of different ways to approach kind of how this works with translucency and stuff. But really what we're aiming for is we're just aiming to create those nice smooth blends on the miniature itself and really just work it together to get a result that hopefully gives some nice smooth transitions. And allow us to do that pretty quick in terms of what's going on. For those asking in the chat as to when Lockjaw is coming out, the Inhumans are all releasing next month in February. I don't have an exact date. BK might have one that's a target date, but I haven't heard it yet. But they are launching in February, so that's going to be Black Bolt, Medusa, Lockjaw, and Crystal, all of whom will be painting this month and having a really good time with. Okay, I'm going to switch over. So I'm going to wash out my brushes really quick. Get the Black Bolt from left, we got a danger zone. I'm going to grab a lighter brown. What do I want here? What do I want? What do we have? I'm actually going to take the Star Brown, which is really, really light. I'm going to mix a little bit of that with my Dubai Brown. I'm going to come up with kind of a lighter middle color and start using that to blend in some more highlights and stuff. I'm just going to work with a bunch of tones, and again, I want to make sure that this paint is nice and loose, so I've got some good working time on it, so I can mess with it on the miniature. And finding that sweet spot is going to vary paint to paint, so you're just kind of looking for something that flows really nice. It feels pretty good. And of course, we'll start mixing this in as well. Just coming from the tops where I think that light would hit. Kind of look at where those muscles are. Start working that together. Grab my mid-tone. Kind of mix that back in with my other brush. You can see how this is a pretty free form. Oh, we want a comparison? What do I have for comparison here? Let's go with Cap. Cap's a good one. He's right up front. So there's Captain America next to Lockjaw. There's kind of the front view. So he's pretty big. He's a chunky boy. He's well fed. He's happy. You know, everything's going pretty well in Lockjaw's life as family pup of the Inhuman royal family. You know, it's not a bad place to be, honestly. Yeah, I'm just mashing that paint together really, and just letting it blend on the model, on the mini, on the canvas. I'm gonna go back and grab some more of our dark color. Get that into these underside recesses, even though part of that's going to be our lighter fur. So you can see how this is coming together already. You just keep going back and forth and mash the paint on there, and don't. The really fun part about wet blending is it's really hard to screw up because you can overwork areas for sure, and then you can get to a point where you're pretty happy and you kind of get lost in the moment like I just did and keep going, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh darn it, that looked better before. But the cool thing is that all the working time you have with the paint really allows you that opportunity to have a lot of leeway to just play and fix mistakes and experiment and try different things. And if you want to pull a color back to its darker side, you just add more, you just work more of that darker color in. If you want to lighten an area up, you pull it back. And so, of course, you start to get this really nice and smooth color transition. And as the paint dries and loses some of that glossiness from its wetness, you'll really start to see those details come to pop through, and it'll look really neat and nice. Now we need to get over here and start hitting these paws. I'm pretty happy with where we are there, so we're just going to quickly fill in these areas here, come back, these upper areas. Work that dark back in. I'm using two size 2 brushes, but I could easily switch as I get kind of closer to a smaller brush for the darker shades, which would give me a little more control over where those are going. The lighter shades, all of that. The tuning for glow effect, we'll see if we get there today. But glow effects are pretty simple at their natural form, The quickest and easiest way to do so without an airbrush or like with a brush is to grab some off-white, some almost pure white but off-white paint. The one that I really like to use from scale is Mojave white. It's a really good off-white. And then build that up, mixing in a little bit pure white in there. And once you've done that, and you've kind of got it to the point that you're pretty happy with it, we're going to switch over to the other side here in a second. So you build up a really nice pure white or a gradient white using that off-white, pure white kind of mix. And then once you have that set, you can pretty much just go in with a fluorescent color. So Scale has some really nice fluorescents in their Fluor line. So if I wanted to do blue, I could grab the fluorescent blue. You can use a really nice, like Scale 75 has a great cyan ink, which I think makes really great glows. So you could come in and use that as well if you wanted to. But you just kind of decide what glow paint you want to use. Fluorescents, I've been playing a lot with fluorescents lately. And I've been having a lot of fun with them. I would show you kind of the test I did on a Scarlet Witch I have, but I'm not allowed to show her yet. So we'll have to come back to that later. But fluorescents can really they just open up a lot of opportunity to really mess around and have some really cool effects. They have a really, really punchy color because they open up the UV spectrum. And they reflect light in a really weird way. So they don't apply like traditional paints in any way, shape, or form. And that's why I've really been playing with them a lot and trying to learn how to use them to their best effects. If you just try to like slap them on like you do any other paint, you're not going to have very much luck with that. So you do have to be a little careful. And they do take practice. So, like anything, you got to kind of like work at it, learn the ins and outs. I've been watching a lot of really great tutorial videos from people who have worked with fluorescents. I've gotten a lot of good ideas there. I've done experiments of my own. It's been a fun little journey. I'm getting a lot more comfortable with them. And of course, if you know what's coming next for Marvel Crisis Protocol, we have a whole load of characters that are really going to benefit from really good glow effects. So we're going to be diving into that a lot more soon too, I'm sure. So we're going to do the rear end of our puppy dog here. These big old chunky haunches. Again, I'm planning on doing that undercoat with the white, so I can be a little sloppy with this brown. And then we'll just kind of play it up as we go. This tail, we'll start wet blending that color together. You can just kind of see how that color just mixes so nice on the mini. Our long working times, again, because we're working with such a big miniature, you really want to watch that paint. Make sure that you used enough medium, enough water. You've kept everything nice and loose. Of course, we want that back end to get built up really nice. Just gonna keep mushing that paint on there. Some of that stuff. Ooh, okay, I'm gonna need to get more of that Thar brown mix going on because it's starting to dry out on me. That's no good. But just take it in steps and stages. Let one area dry and then work the other area together. Because he's an organic, like natural puppy dog, getting that perfect uniformity is not really something you have to worry about. And then if we want to, once we have our colors laid down, we can do what we did with Hank McCoy, and we can come back in and start adding all that fur texture with our brush by mixing up a really light kind of upper fur texture. And we come back in and do a bunch of scritches and give them kind of that really good natural fur feel. So we can really play with that. So we've got options when it comes to how we're approaching Lockjaw and how perfect we need these blends to be and what's going on here. So we're just really looking to build up those volumes and create those nice transitions and not mess up areas that we've already done. And of course, if the paint dries on the one side and we want to go back and mess with it some more, we can always just go back, and wet blend again over the top of it. I want to get some darkness into these crevices here as I move back over and build up this part. Coming over to the other side now because I'm pretty happy with that back. You can see that paint's getting pulled from one side to the other too, so I'm having to do a little less work on this side than I did on the other side. Hit that paw a little bit. Get that going on. Get this going on. Even that underside for the white. I do. This is a primer lid that I have them on. I just use some double-sided mounting tape. If you have rattle can lids, they make great holders. Pretty much anything that fits your hand comfortably can be good. Wooden dowels, if you have the ability to grab some wooden dowels, they're fantastic. You can get them in different sizes. They'll fit your bases. No need for fancy handles, I find. Although there's definitely a lot of options out there. Whatever works best for you, whatever's comfortable for your hand and gets you good results and makes you feel confident, then by all means, find that thing. Okay, I got to mix up some more of my light color. And then I think we're going to come back. We're going to just do some more Thar brown on its own. Just that next layer of highlight. And we'll start wet blending that with our other colors. What's under the rattle can lid? No, nothing. It's just a rattle can lid. There's a little blue tack in there. Nothing scary. Nothing untowards. Mash this in. And I'm kind of letting the detail, the texture of the miniature itself help with this. So this is a little bit like a dry brush almost like I'm just letting that paint catch the higher edges. And then I can come back through and I can grab my other brush and use my wet blend, just kind of smooth it out. Pick out the areas, Get that going on. These look really nice. But it's all about just playing what's there. Again, finding kind of that mix that makes you feel pretty good. So we're just having fun. This is probably going to be one of the, maybe the less exciting transmissions that we do just based on the technique here, but I can tell you, like, when you're doing it, when you're in the process of wet blending, it's a blast. You're just kind of like making art on the miniature itself, making those colors come through the way you want. In a really fast and organic kind of way. Okay. Dallas, yeah, when we were at the studio, because we had a different camera setup, we had mounted them on mic stands. So we just used plain old mic stands basically, and those served as it's kind of our stationary, like they held us in place so we always stayed on camera. But I think Dallas still uses one for his because he has a standing desk that he uses for streaming, so he has a different angle than I do. I use my workstation or my desk that I have at home, so it's a sitting desk. So I found that the best way to get the camera angles and stuff so y'all could see what was going on and give me the most flexibility for comfort when it came to doing the painting and stuff was to have it over my shoulder. So I don't mount mine anymore. This is a lot more like how I normally paint. And I don't think Dallas uses the stand either when he is not painting on camera because there's less concern about, going off camera and stuff. But I always use the lids and everything to make sure that I have a nice way to grip the miniature and manipulate it. It's just easier than trying to hold on to the tiny rim of the base. Although so long as you're not doing like wet blending or something where the paint is constantly in danger of being pulled off, to be fair, you can touch your miniature all you want. Once the paint's drying, you're not gonna be in that much trouble unless you have paint on your fingers or something, Just gonna loosen up my light color. Come back up top. Sketch that out again really quick. Come back in with the middle color. Bring that back in. And then quite well. We're looking pretty good on this side. If I go back to the other side and just see if we need to mess anything back. A little darker on the side, but paint will change a bit when it dries. So come in. Get that, a little bit of this. Blend that out. Get a little bit more highlight on that foot. A little more right here, right here. And I'm shifting a little bit more back to like a 2-brush blend where I'm applying the paint with one brush and then I'm using the other brush to kind of blend out the paint, which we do a lot. I don't know, a little eraser brush. Come to the face here. Pick up those details. Get that dark color into the eye. That. Come across the nose. Now, astute observers of Lockjaw will know that he has kind of a fake mustache on the front of his face with his coloring on his muzzle. So we'll need to come in and do that as well. Take care of that probably right now. So I'm just going to grab some black. And we'll wet blend that together. So this is just a flat black from scale 75. And I'm going to use this, and I'll wet blend it with my original base dark color. And we'll just come in, lay down that black over the muzzle. We'll give him that classic, like, mustachioed look here, because he's so smiley and stuff. Grab some of that brown and mix that brown in, so it's not just stark black. Some of it together. Come back to our black. So let's kind of like mix this up. I'm not following these lines perfectly, but I can always go in and clean it up later too. Trying to get that overall sensation. That darker fur. So this is going to be more black than it is brown, but the brown will help tie it together and make it feel more natural. I think that it goes over the nose, so I'm not going to have it go over the nose, but it's easy enough to fix later if we're wrong about that. Okay. Come back down here. I'm actually going to make that underside of the chin. So I made a little bit of a mistake there. That's okay. Wet blend it out. There's so much working time and all this stuff. It's great. I want to come in and darken up the eyes. A lot of the images that I saw, the eyes were pretty dark. So I'm going to grab my black, wet blend. Get that nice darkness into the eye sockets. Just kind of get in there. This will work. Whoop. A little spillover. That's okay. You can just blend it away. So that's the way that this works. A little bit of that. Get in there. Whoop. Make sure you're using your clean brush, not your dirty brush. Otherwise, you wind up making a big mistake. Okay, let's take a look. So you can see how we have all this nice kind of color melding and everything's like going together now that it's nice and dry. That was really quick and easy for the most part. So I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. We have some nice stuff going on. I do want to mess a little bit with these folds. I'm going to switch my brushes to some smaller ones just so I have a little bit more control. I'm going to check my paint, make sure that it's nice and loose still, because it is drying up on me, even though I used a lot of mixer in there. I just want to come back through and quickly sketch out these areas here. And just get these folds a little more defined. My paint is still semi-wet, so I can kind of blend out as I go with this. I'll grab my other color, just blend it up. Because my paint still has that long working time, I can still utilize the wetness on the mini. And just kind of like blend things back. Not to pull it too much. Kind of like some of those lines going on. Really emphasize that forward motion of Lockjaw here, like bounding forward and stuff. So grab that middle color and blend a bit. And blend up. So I'm just kind of like playing with how my blends kind of transition down since I did the miniature in 3 different stages a bit. The paint really wants to pull up there, so. Get the ears a little lighter. Because we miss those. We'll come down the head a little bit. There we go. Come back over this. A little bit of this to mix in. So this is, again, this is just my lighter coat. This is that Thar brown and that Dubai brown mixed together. Just want to kind of mix this a little bit together. Get that brightness on the ear tips and on the head. Mix that, and we'll come back over to the front. We'll get these wrinkles a little more defined, so grab that mid-tone, come over the eyebrows, across the nose. This is really easy because I'm just following the amazing folds and the detail that Marco put in. He's got so much skin, so floppy. And come back in, grab a little bit of that brighter color, that Thar mix. And blend that together while it's still a little wet. We'll just see where that takes us. Go a little bit on the ears. So now I'm just kind of doing more of a traditional edge highlight, but I'm still letting that wet paint work for me. So things are blending together nicely. Come down the side of the face, down the side of the face, following those lines. Stuff really come together. Get down on the cheeks a little bit. Down here on the other side of the cheek. Tip of that ear. Get that kneecap. Backside of that haunch. Grab that tail a little bit. Blend that out, come back around, there we go. Oh my gosh, what crazy alternative can Dallas paint? I don't know. He can paint anything. I mean, he's Dallas. Okay, so let's go to the underbelly. For this, I'm just going to use that Thar brown. That's Mojave white. That's definitely not the right color, but good try. So, pull this back just a little bit. So we're gonna hit the underside to give him that white belly that we want from some of those images and from the short-lived TV show as well, I believe. For this, I'm not gonna wet blend it because it's not really gonna be easy to wet blend and it's kind of hidden anyway. So I'm just gonna traditionally apply this. Again, we want it kind of under the chin. See how the coverage goes on this. Might have thinned it out just a little too much. That's okay though. We can do it in a couple of different. So on this one, I'm just gonna look for an opportunity to kind of blend it together. And I can let this be pretty rough and patchy because it's natural fur. We can always come back in with our browns and clean it up later too. So this will be a couple of coats and that's okay. kind of using a little bit of a stippling motion here to just like mash the paint on, give it a bit of texture and that feel. Still trying to keep it relatively smooth. Come down the leg a little bit. Inside the leg, you know, where you can see it. This underside here on this leg. Left a pretty good spot in the belly. And then of course, because we focused on the top, have that more natural patchiness for the underside. For the belly scritches, this soft color. So we're just going to play and fill it in. We'll make our own kind of color scheme for Lockjaw as far as its coloration goes and stuff. And then once we've kind of laid this out, any place that went a little too high, a little higher than I wanted to there. Okay, looks good. Like that. So the trick it's really easy to keep your paint from getting clumpy and chalky in this technique, but what it requires is you do have to pay attention to, you know, getting enough. I can't recommend glaze medium enough. You can use matte medium, mixing medium, flow aid, all of that stuff. I really like the glaze medium. It gives you a lot of working time. It's pretty easy to work with, and it stops your paint from being clumpy. Now, it does mean that if you wind up using it for things that are not washes or not wet blending, things like that, it's going to take a bit more coverage for it to work out. But you just have to watch, you know, just always watch that paint consistency. If it starts to, Lamea medium is just a glaze. It's a glaze medium. It's a mixing medium. It's a flow aid. You know, they all have slightly different properties, and some places like Vallejo makes all kinds of mediums. There are a bunch of different artist mediums. There's like mediums for everything basically. Leman, for those asking in chat, is exactly, it will work just as well as anything else in terms of its properties and what it's designed to do. So it's an extender, and the extenders are like paint extenders are basically just the emulsion. They're the liquid that the paint pigment is suspended in the bottle. So, you know, all you're doing is you're just adding more of that, which unlike water doesn't dilute it as much. It just kind of, it allows the pigment to extend while keeping its binder. So you notice how if you add too much water or something, it loosens up to the point where it just doesn't cover at all. It runs everywhere. The pigments go yucky. By using medium, you maintain that hold. So you stretch the pigments out, which softens the color. Of course, they take longer to dry, so it increases your dry time. But it doesn't hurt the adhesion like water does. Water actually reduces the paint's adhesion properties because water isn't, you know, it's not designed to do that. Water just flows and then it dries out. So water works great to a certain extent, but if you're really going to start thinning out your paints, if you want to create washes and all that stuff, your best bet is to find a medium that you like and just really start to explore and dive into that. And it will really help you with things like that. It's a great way to bring extra longevity to your working times, obviously. Like we talked about, you can use a wet palette for that. You know, wet palettes will do the same thing. They keep the paints from drying out. However, once you take the paint off the wet palette, your working time obviously goes down. A medium can help extend that, like you saw here. Like our paints in Lockjaw, like there's still areas where the paint is still workable. We're getting to that tacky stage where really I need to just let it dry if I want to go back in and start messing with it and stuff. But all of that stuff is super, super possible. Okay. Well, we let that dry. Let's do the tuning fork. Why not? So we want to do a bright blue glow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab, this will work. I'm going to grab Nakar, which is kind of a grayish off-white. So it's got a little blue tint to it. Just a little bit, not a lot. Kind of a blue, bluish green. Looks a little sickly. It's like pallid flesh almost. So we're going to take that, we're going to apply it to the tuning fork. If our tuning fork wasn't brown, this probably would go on a little quicker, but we'll do a couple of coats of it. Do our best to keep this as smooth as possible. Back around. Probably need to shake that bottle a little better. That's okay. Let's do some thin coats and we'll work it out. And if we get a little spillover, that's going to be okay because it'll just help. I suppose if we're going to have the tuning fork glow blue, we should probably have the eyes glow blue, eh? So it's powering up. So we can do that now too. We'll just take the same color. Hit those big old dopey eyes. Trying to keep the black edging that we have around those. And talk about a really great Amy for working on your eyeballs. Mr. Lockjaw has some fantastic peepers. Marco just really knocked it out of the park with this guy. Okay. We have that. I'm going to switch over really quick because I want that to dry before I go in for the next one. Let's do the tongue really quick. So we're going to grab this Bloodfresh Crimson color. We're going to slap that on. It's a nice deep like sanguine color. We'll put that on the tongue. We'll kind of get it in the mouth too, just to kind of color everything up. Careful not to get it on our browns. He does have a lot of gum showing, so kind of work that in and stuff. Certainly a stage where if you wanted to not have to mash paint in like I'm doing now, you could leave the bottom jaw off. Or you could blue tack the top of the head so it pops right off. There are a couple options. I don't think this is too bad though, since most people won't really be looking super, super close to the mouth. It would make those teeth and stuff a little easier to get to as well. Mash that red on the tongue. And then we'll use probably some purples and stuff to give it a more tonguey feel. You can see I got a little bit of touch-up work to do on the underside of the jaw, but that won't be too hard to mess with as we move forward here. And honestly, if I left it that way, 90% of people would never see it. Okay, so we have our tongue done. That going on. Let's take a look. It looks like the car is not quite dry, so we'll go back to our Thar brown belly. And we'll just do one more coat of this. Working on smoothing that out just a little bit before we go in with our next batch of color. So we're just going to hit this going. Get onto the areas in the feet that we want. A little bit of that transition. We can be a little rough and sloppy with it. It's just going to make it look more like natural fur patterning, which is cool. Get chin just a bit better. There we go. Perfect. Let's go back to our Nakar really quick. Tuning fork just one more time. Okay, so that's good. Go over my pure black. I'm going to do the nose really fast. Now we're just going to switch back and forth because we're doing a lot of little areas and let stuff kind of dry. So for the doggo nose, I'm just going to do pure black, which will stand out against our darker like mustachio fur because we mixed our dark brown, our umber, and our black together to create more of a fur texture. So that everything would blend in. Get those teeth. I'm just going to line them in black really quick, just because it will make it easier to pick them out as we move forward. We could do the foot pads in black and all that other good stuff too, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. Okay. So let's go in and that car's pretty good. I'm going to grab, where is it? I believe it's called Snowy White, White Sands. So we're going to grab White Sands next. And this is just a more true white color. It's just a bit more of a true white than the Nakar is. Got an eggshell kind of coloration to it. So I'm not going to cover all of the Nakar. I just want to get kind of areas where I want that glow to be a little more pronounced. So this will help as we put on. You can kind of be rough and stipple it on too, if you want to. There we go. Grab a brush with a really nice tip so I can do the eyes. So the trick here is that you want to try to just get like 50% of the eye. You don't want to do all the eye. You want kind of that white hot spot. And that's going to work with everything to make sure that that fluorescent is going to have spots where it'll be lighter and darker. You're kind of thinking about it if you were using a wash. My favorite techniques that I've seen with those fluorescents, you treat them a lot like a wash. And then last but not least, we're going to grab some pure white. And we're just going to dot a couple of really, really hot spots in. So tip of the tuning fork, maybe kind of in the center here. And then just the dottiest dot of pure white in the center of those eyes. There, beautiful. Okay. Beagle Lockjaw. Oh, Dallas, I like it. Seems like a winner to me. It seems like a winner to me. Let's go ahead and grab that Thar Brown and our Dubai Sand, and let's see if we can mix up a little bit of a fur color here. For our fur texture, we'll just run through some fur texture really quick. I won't do it over the whole mini, but we gotta kind of let that white dry really good before we go in with the stuff. So like we did on Beast, you know, the way to just get in some of that fur texture is just grab a really light color and then just start really lightly giving in some fur texture, some little scritches. This can be as much or as little as you want. And just that little bit of extra texture, and you can blend it out so it's a little smoother. it's a little too stark for you, you can darken up your colors. Like this might need a little bit of more of a mixture. And with my other stuff, whoop. But you have those little tufts, these things. And another thing that I could do is I could add this fur texture, and I could go back through like a brown glaze and kind of glaze it back out. Look how those are coming out at all. Add a little bit more. I'm gonna loosen that paint up just a little bit. Just give it a little less punch. And then maybe we'll add a little bit more of that Dubai Sands in there, just to darken it up just a little bit. Because I think it's a little too pulled away. This is just part of playing with those colors. Let's try that. Let's try that. You do want your little fur scratches to be fairly noticeable, you know, not like a leap out at you, but a little texture is going to add an extra element of, you know, a little bit of fur. It's going to make it feel more like it's not completely flat. You can do as much or as little of it as you want based on how you feel, how you want to do it. Do you want more? Do you want less? You're just kind of going to go in and give it a little texture shots. And on this back haunch here, you can just do a little bit like right here. Give that a little bit of rough fur. If your lines start to get a little too thick because your paint's starting to dry out on you, just come back in and blend it out. You kind of see how that adds another very easy and very nice element. Helps that miniature just pop a little bit more. 3D. Again, this is not something you have to do over the whole. In fact, less is oftentimes more when it comes down to really selling the effect, depending on the area and stuff. What I'm doing is just kind of following a lot of the muscles are really triangular. So if you just kind of start and then come down into that triangle, so starting up here, here, and then just kind of like drawing all my lines down into a point, it'll give you kind of that natural tufting of fur. And so if you don't feel super comfortable trying that on like big areas like the haunches and stuff, you certainly don't have to. You can just leave those alone. But again, just keep your little scrubby brush next to you and you can blend it out. If you get things you don't like, or if your lines are a little too thick, you can always start over again. Okay, so I think our white is looking pretty dry. We'll probably go back to that tongue really quick and we'll close out by putting that blue on. So I'm just going to do a little bit more there. Okay. Going back to our tongue, we're going to grab our sanguine. We're going to grab that Crimson Bloodfest. We're going to grab a little bit of off-white. So for this, the Thar Brown will work great. We're just going to mix that into a little bit of a salmony pink. Something like that. So you can see it's kind of the color that I went for here. I'll just come back through, kind of hit out the tongue, I'm not really worrying about the drool strings yet because we'll just come back and paint those in later. So I'm going to hit most of the area of the tongue. I was using that first sanguine highlight as more of a shade foundation for this color. So I'm okay with covering most of it. Now in the mouth and stuff, I'll leave it in like the deepest recesses, but say like right here where we've got that little bit of like gum line jowl connector, come in and hit that. Around the teeth down here, look at that. Come back across. Grab a bit more Thar brown, add it to my color. Get some that's more Thar brown than red. Come in and kind of like splooch in. You look at you look at gums and stuff, they have a lot of texture to them too, so by not being super consistent with the application of that paint, we'll get something that's a little more like a gum, feel a little bit more natural and stuff. Let's come in with this. Now what we can do is do wet blending on the tongue if we want to, because you can wet blend anything. So it's a fun technique to use on cloth. I really like to do on tongues. I did it on my Venom tongue actually. My entire Venom tongue was wet blended using a similar technique as I did here. But we hit that once it dries with a purple wash, it'll look really good. I think let's do a really quick test here. Okay, great. Our white's nice and dry. So we'll grab the electric blue fluorescent, which is one of the fluorescent colors. You gotta give it just a really good shake. And then you can pretty much, once you've based in that white, now there's a lot of different ways to do this, but this is the quick and dirty method. You can kind of check opacity, and then you can just kind of come through. Do a little bit of water to this, but not much. It's already going to be pretty transparent. I just want it for the flow smoothness. If you get a little bit onto your brown or whatever, that's okay because it's just going to look like a little bit of OSL glow. So you can already see how quickly that fluorescent gave us this really great glow effect. And then we can do the same thing on our tuning fork. Just because it's a bit of a larger area, I might thin it out just a little bit more so we get a bit more of a transition. But start, pull up. So there's a couple of different layers of white that we use, from the kind of green white to the off eggshell white to the pure white. Allow that fluorescent to have different hot spots, which of course help change how much light's reflected back, how vibrant the effect is, and that helps it feel like it's got a lot of glow to it. So there's a really quick and dirty, but a super effective blue glow. Just using a fluorescence and some white. And then of course, if you want to go back and add a little bit of extra pop, a bit of extra effect, you can take some of your white, you can come back in and you can hit out some of the edges. Maybe get into the center there. And kind of mix those together. Just give that a little bit of extra pop. Do the same things with the eyes too if you want to. You can come back in and kind of give them that little center spot glow. It's really quick and easy to do. Just helps add to that effect. And of course, you can be as clean or as messy with that as you want to be. If you go too far, you can just grab a little bit more of your blue fluorescent, come back in and kind of like mix it back up and work it away if you want to. And you can do that. You can mix the two together. You can wet blend them together. The big thing is that if you, of course, mix normal paint and your fluorescents together, you're gonna lose some of the fluorescent shtick. So you want to just be aware of that you will affect kind of the fluorescent properties when you put it in with normal paint, but you can definitely mix in quite a bit before you really start to lose anything. And also, if you don't want to do it this way and you want to actually like dry brush on the fluorescents in various stages, I've seen some really amazing stuff where people use dry brushing to create these really amazing, almost airbrush-like blends using fluorescents and stuff. You can do that. It just takes a little bit of paint and it all pulls it together. So there you go. So there's blue tuning fork, blue eyes, flashy lockjaw. Last thing we'll do is we'll mix up a little bit of violet ink tints, since we are at time, and a little bit of crimson ink tints. I'll make kind of a dark maroon, a little bit on the purple side wash. Again, using our glazed medium and stuff. We'll come back through and we'll just hit that tongue. We'll tint it back up. And again, this is a wash, so we really want it to pool into those recesses and such. Give us that texture. You can be pretty rough with this. It doesn't have to be smooth. It's just going to add to that organic feel. The fun thing about painting living creatures is that, you know, nature is pretty splotchy when it comes to things. Symmetry is somewhat important, but you don't get a whole lot of like normal solid colors or smooth transitions. You get a lot of splooches and roughness and stuff. All right. So definitely some things that I want to do to continue on my Lockjaw journey. We, of course, have to do the drool train, which we didn't get to. Definitely want to do another layer of highlight on the underside of the belly, even though it's pretty dark and no one's going to see it. We'll do the pads of the paws, you know, we'll get everything cleaned up. And we'll do some more of those scritches as we go. But overall, if you slapped the base, called it done, did the teeth really quick, I would say that this would be an amazing mini, ready for the tabletop and good to go. That wet blending gave us a really nice result in terms of our blends and our smoothness. And we did it very quickly over a large area, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, I'll never say no to wet blending. It's just so much fun to do. So I hope you all enjoyed this episode of Atomic Mass Transmissions Live. Be sure to check in with us on Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific as Dallas Kemp does his interpretation of Lockjaw. It sounds like we're going to have Beagle Lockjaw, so we're going to be doing some different exploration of colors. We'll see how Dallas approaches it, whether he does wet blending, washing, some other new technique. But overall, don't be afraid to continue to, on your hobby journey, pick up those brushes, have fun, work with it. There's nothing more enjoyable than seeing your skills increase. Of course, search out all kinds of different resources, teachers, all of that stuff. There's so many things you can learn online. I had a lot of fun over the break, just kind of expanding my horizons and what I was doing. I'm looking forward to sharing more of that as we work forward and progress together throughout the year. So until next time, folks, be safe, be healthy, be good to each other, and we will see you on the next one. Goodbye.